Welcome to Vinyasa in Verse, the podcast where we connect mind, body, and spirit through poetry and practice. I'm Leslie Ann Hobayan. Together, we'll explore different ways of connecting with our innermost selves and how to tap into the flow of the universe. Because once that happens, anything is possible. Your best life starts now. All right. Hello, loves. Welcome to another episode of Vinyasa in Verse. How are you on this beautiful day? I hope wherever you are, you're able to take a moment just to breathe and enjoy the beauty of that breath. And so today, I have a very special guest. I'm so excited. This guest, I want to say you are probably the second male guest on my show. Only the second. So I'm very excited by this, but we also go way back. Longer than I want to do the math for. And but I will read a proper introduction for this beautiful person. So he teaches poetry at Indiana University, is the author of the following poetry collections: Against Which, Bringing the Shovel Down, Lace and Pyrite, Letters from Two Gardens, which was a cute, awesome, beautiful little book with Amy Nezuko-Matatiel. River with Rose Warenberg.
Yeah, Rose Indiana.
Oh,
yeah.
Thank you. And Catalog of Unabashed Gratitude.
Yeah.
And you're also the author of the essay collection, The Book of Delights, with the newest book right here, if you're watching the video, maybe not, is Beholding. So welcome to the show, Ross Gay. Woo! I'm going to make all the audio special effects.
Thank you so much. Glad to talk with you.
Yeah, I'm so glad. I'm so glad we finally got to connect.
Yeah.
Because I feel like you're a good fit for the theme of the show, which is about bringing spirituality and writing and those kinds of practices together and how that informs who we are being. So to start our episode, we will flip through the great roulette of poems by Hafiz, the great Sufi mystic poet, my favorite. And today, I read that one yesterday. I got to pick a different one. Oh, here we go. That Tree We Planted. Beloved Master, that tree we planted near the spot that became your tomb has grown so well that it is now several times my height. When the season comes that makes its leaves bow and whirl, Hafiz will then sleep upon the ground, hoping in at least a dream you will kiss my cheek again.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah. Do you got that in your brain? Do you want me to read it again? Are you good?
Read it again.
Read it again? Yeah. Okay. That tree we planted. Beloved Master, that tree we planted near the spot that became your tomb has grown so well that it is now several times my height. When the season comes that makes its leaves bow and whirl, Hafiz will then sleep upon the ground, hoping in at least a dream you will kiss my cheek again.
Lovely. Yeah.
What do you like about that poem, or what do you notice, or what's standing out for you?
Well, one is like the kind of, to me, beautiful and also like something that I relate to or connect to process of, whatever, like making the tomb and the living thing right next to each other, or each other, which is a beautiful thing. I love that the tree planted right next to the tomb, and that the idea that of course, that the tree sort of, that whoever was in the tomb, the dead, actually sort of moves into the tree and becomes the tree, and the sort of, I love that thing, at least in a dream. In a way, when I was hearing it the second time, I was like, I don't think in the dream is a diminishment of the visitation or the presence.
Mm.
You know, the at least, because I think the translation it said at least in a dream or something like that. But I don't think there's a diminishment. I think in some way I'm sort of wondering if the dream is just as significant as the quote unquote not dream, you know.
Mm.
So the way I'm sort of saying that the poem is sort of expanding the notion of what the dream is, you know. I wonder, that's a question.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's so funny because when you talked about the idea of diminishment, I thought of it more as like, I've got at least this taste of what's possible in the
Mm-hmm.
dream,
Mm-hmm.
because in the not dream, it's not as easy for me to access the divine or to connect.
Right, right, right,
But when
right,
I die, that's something I have to look forward to.
right, right, right. Or when I connect, that's something that I have to, have to look forward to. Yeah,
That
that's
too.
just so like, yeah, it's so beautiful. I mean, you know, partly I'm laughing too because I'm like, the older I get, the more I'm like, oh, I must have got the poem that I wrote about that from this poem. Like I must have just read this poem and then just tucked it away in my brain, and then like 10 years later, like, oh, I have this poem about planting a tree, and my dad. It's like, and he's gonna come back and he's actually gonna like brush his fucking leaves against my face.
I
It's like, wow, I thought I wrote that one.
know.
Nope.
Yeah.
I didn't
Yep.
write it.
Well, it's so funny because as I'm reading it, I was like, this is like Ross's poem Burial.
Oh, I mean, it's hilarious.
It's the same poem, basically, you guys.
I'm sure there are many others that are kind of
Yeah.
in the ballpark, but
That's so funny.
it's so great. It's so beautiful. I love it. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny that you bring that up because I got like two things trying to come out one whole. First, I noticed that in the new book that you thank like everybody and their mother, right, in the acknowledgments. But what I love about it is that it is this call out to say, hey, I didn't write these poems. This was a community effort. Whether you actually knew that you were part of that community or not doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's just that I'm not an individual, that I am part of a whole, a collective, in a way that's more tangible than what people express in spiritual communities. Like in spiritual communities, like yoga communities and things, they're like, we're all one. We all come from the same divine spirit or source or whatever it is. And that's okay. But conceptually, that's a little abstract and hard to grasp, right? It's like, well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
But for you, especially with this book, Beholding, there's tangibility of, well, this poem wouldn't have been born if I didn't read this book by this person or have this conversation with this person. And I really appreciate that spotlight on the collaborative effort, even if it's collaboration with non-people.
Yeah. Yeah. And even if like this conversation will fundamentally change my life, even if if it's not, I don't know how, or I don't, or it's not like I start weeping and like, run down the street and like change my life. This conversation will fundamentally change my life. And it's like, when I say fundamentally, I mean, it'll change my life. That's what I mean. And so to practice that, like, I wonder what, and like, believe me, I am like when I am doing that, I'm doing that as practice, like, because I am just as formed, by the sort of, as I say, I think in the acknowledgement, something like the bullshit lie of the individual accomplishment, or the individual genius, or whatever the fuck it is. I'm as much like sick in the head with that shit too. And so partly it feels like, no, this is practice. This is a practice, not for everyone, but I'll say for me and for plenty of us, I think, to understand and to sort of articulate and to notice the ways that, oh, I'm not myself. I'm actually, this thing that people are like, oh, this poem that you wrote, it's just like, kind of like helped me so much. Yeah. I'm so glad. I'm so glad that we got to do this thing together. I'm so glad. I didn't write that poem, like,
Yeah.
kind of came, and in terms of like that, the question, like things coming through us,
Yeah.
which can sound like, in a certain kind of, perspective that I am trying less and less to identify with, um, that I used to really strongly identify with, which was that things don't come through you. You make things, you work, you sit down to it,
Mm.
but the more I I feel like I'm getting clearer or something, softening, getting older, maybe getting closer to dying and sort of joining to another kind of joining, is I'm like, no, that's exactly what it is. Like, your labor is a thing, sure. And also you are gifted. It is, there are streams, there are
Mm.
constant streams. And it's sort of like, it is not, it is not, um, you know, it is not, what's the word? Like, I want to say like, no, it's just kind of true. I think that we are not, I think it is just true that we are sort of perpetually being held and in the holding of something, whether we acknowledge it or not. That's a whole nother thing. And to me, it requires practice. And I do want to say one more thing.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Because I was with my mother over the holidays for like 2 weeks. It's been a while.
Mm.
In fact, that's the longest I'd been with my mother since when my dad was dying, which was like 2004, when I moved in with them for like 5 months or something. And it's 2 weeks, that's a long time. And my mom lives in like a little apartment, and so it's not like you can like get away. For
It's
her,
like,
or
oh, there you are again.
yeah, exactly. So it was just like beautiful, and all the things, and but at one point I was with my mother, and I realized, we have our memories are different. We have
Mm.
different relationships to memory, and our bodies are different. And my mother's, she'll be 80 in July 13th. She'll be 80,
Mm.
and I'm 46. And as we were hanging around talking, she would say something, and I'd be like, "Damn, I don't remember that at all. I just didn't remember it." But then she would fill it out, and I'd be like, oh yeah, I remember. And I would say things that, she didn't remember. And then, maybe she'd kind of, and then I was like, and when this occurred to me, it did sort of made me think, oh, is this like, have I read this in a book or something? But like in a very real way, like we talk about my memory. I have my memory. And I was like, no, my mother also is my memories.
Mm.
You also, we've known each other for longer than, 2 decades plus.
You had to do the math, huh? No, just kidding. It's fine.
But you also, right? Like you also are my memory.
Mm.
Like there are things that you'll be like, wait, we did that. And I'll be like, oh,
Yeah.
that's the thing that we did. And vice versa. I'm your memory.
Right.
So that
Right.
even like in those ways that we often think of as being, we're discrete individuals, it's like, no, we hold in that very basic way, like we actually hold each other's minds. Like the
Yeah.
thing that constitutes our minds is held by other.
Yeah.
And on
That's a trip.
any example, it's a trip. It's a trip.
That's it. So you said a lot, and I was like, okay, which thing do I want to pick up on first? But the idea of our minds being held by others is a trip, because it's like, wait a minute, you telling me that I'm not my mind by myself? Like, so I want to ask this question sort of as a way to create a little bit more conversation. I don't want to say devil's advocate, because it's not, but to complicate the conversation a little
Yeah.
bit, right? So there's this understanding that
Angel's advocate.
okay, there you go, angel's advocate. I got my wings. There's this idea that what our inner world is what creates our outer world,
Mhm,
right? So
mhm.
however we're being on the inside, if we're good with who we are on the inside, our world will generally reflect that.
Yeah.
Okay, so then there's this idea that what you have going on in your mind creates your reality.
Mhm,
So layer that on top of how your mind is held by others,
mhm,
and
mhm.
so then I'm almost imagining like a math equation, right?
Mhm.
You've got people people's minds, people holding your mind here. You've got your own mind here. Add those two together. What do you get?
Mm-hmm.
Because we've got a reality around us
Mm-hmm.
that we can shift. There are some folks who are like of the mindset of, I'm always struggling and life sucks and then you die, that kind of thing. And so their life is going to reflect that.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be one disappointing thing after another, one challenge after another. But then there'll be another person next to them who's like, life is amazing, and then one blessing will come into their life after another. And so, how can that interact with this idea of other people holding our minds? Because we'll take the example of those two people, right? With a positive outlook and a really negative one, and they live in the same house,
Mm-hmm.
but their realities are totally different.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How can that negative person's mind, let's say negative Nellie, says
Mm-hmm.
to positive Polly, like, do you remember when you forgot to take out the trash?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And positive Polly is like, what are you talking about? I took out the trash.
Right.
So I'm just raising those kinds of factors in there just to see like what else is there that helps build who we are.
Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, it's a great question. Like even when you say that, it's like, oh, I wonder if that's a little bit like Sangha,
Yeah.
like like partly part, like being in community with folks who are, kind of,
Like-minded.
yeah, yeah. But at the same time, I think so many things about that. Like one, I think that um I mean, it's a really interesting question you bring up about like um um someone's apparent, two people's apparent material sort of experiences can be identical, and one person can be like, this sucks, and another person can be like, this is amazing. um and I think what to me is, which is exactly what you're saying, like a kind of interior relationship to something. And um and at least one of those, the things I'm trying to think through this. um of course, the first thing I want to be like or notice is that, right, the one of the practices that I think this is kind of connected to, one of the, in terms of practices, it feels like a useful practice is to um be able to articulate your blessings, you know and so um and a useful practice, and partly for me, a useful practice is to be, part of articulating my blessings is to articulate my gratitude for everything which has made it possible for me to be, period. Trying to, as a practice. um and it definitely, I think, is helpful to be doing that practice with other people who aren't like, well, that's bullshit.
Right, right. You don't want to be like counting your blessings with the person who's like, there are no blessings in this world. What are you talking about?
Right,
You
right,
know,
right, right, right.
it's
Yeah,
like attracts like you got to hang out with your people.
right. But at the same time, um, um, at the same time, I do feel like the question of holding each other's, I mean, yeah, I mean, that thing of, if we hold each other's, you know, if we hold each other's memories, then it probably is I'm really just wondering right here.
Yeah, yeah,
It seems like then we probably also we hold each other's dreams, for sure.
yeah, yeah.
And when I mean dreams, I mean like sleeping dreams, and I probably also mean the other kinds of dreams. Um, we hold each other's joys, we hold each other's sorrows, we can hold each other's annoyances.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, and and that seems really significant, you know, like, um, I mean, one thing, like, I I will have periodically people remind me of a dream that I told them about, which is just, I don't know, it's just like beautiful to me. And it's more sort of, I think maybe I'm just sort of like continuing to build the argument that our minds are actually, you know,
All the
uh,
same. We
yeah,
are all just one mind.
that we're a mind, you know, like it is not to me like at all, you know, like to suggest that the tree, when I notice that the buds on the tree are starting to do something, to suggest that the tree is not in fact part of my mind is like a little bit. Or when the birds start making a different sound and it's the sound of like spring is coming and my mind is like, oh, spring is coming, the birds are doing something.
Yeah.
Uh, to suggest that the birds are not part of my mind to me is like incorrect.
Yeah. Yeah.
But to be like holding each other's sorrows, holding each other's annoyances, holding each other's, you know, delights, etc. Um, it's a thing, you know, like, yeah, I I don't know exactly what it is, but in some way I want to stay with Nelly in a certain kind of way, you know, I want to figure out like, I want to, I want to stay with her.
Why are you so negative, Nelly?
Yeah, yeah, or even just like, is that it? Like, is that it?
Mm,
You know?
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
And I think that's an important question, especially for both fictional characters that I've just created, right? Because you can't have light without dark, right?
mhm,
I mean, you can't have yin without yang. So negative Nelly can't exist without positive Polly,
mhm,
you
mhm,
know. But if they do, then what else is there? You know,
mhm,
because I feel like there might be something that is being withheld,
mhm,
something that's being denied.
mhm,
You know, in the case of negative Nelly, there's maybe a positivity underneath all those layers of negativity, but it's not safe to feel the positivity for
mhm,
that Nelly, you know.
mhm,
And then with positive Polly, it could be there is negativity, but again, that feels scary, so we're just going to shove it down and
mhm,
pretend it doesn't exist.
mhm, mhm.
Um, but
Well, that's
together,
yeah.
yeah, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say together they can, if they're living in the same apartment, they
Yeah,
can, they're holding each other
yeah,
in each other's minds to influence or sway or somehow inform how they're seeing the world in relationship to each other.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I also, the other thing I think of is just in terms of negative and positive, I'm like, um, in a certain kind of way, I'm like, and I think you get this, but or I'm imagining something that is a little beyond negative and positive, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm imagining something that is not at all um, that is actually not positive. Um, that is actually true. and and when I say true, I mean, you know, like I think about joy a lot. You know, I have that book called The Book of Delights, you know, and but I think about joy a lot. And when I think about when I think about the sort of idea of like, you know, how you put it, like counting your blessings, um, I don't in the least, I don't in the least think of the capacity or the willingness or the ability um, or the desire to count one's blessings as being at all in opposition or different from actually attending to one's sorrows at all.
Mm,
And in a way, I feel like, you know, like, so I'm sort of like introducing another sort of um, kind of thinking or practice, which is like exactly what you say. It's not about like, you know, suppressing what's fucking horrible and sorrowful and painful. I'm not talking at all about that. And I'm not talking at all either about, a kind of happiness industry. I don't care about,
Right.
I don't care about that. And I feel like that's just the same sort of shit. That's like the kind of, capitalistic, ravenous, world destroying shit. What I'm interested in is a kind of the ability or the desire or the practice, and the community of folks, who are interested in or learning, studying how we are connected. And our connection is not only like we're all connected, it's like, and we're gonna die. Yeah. And we're gonna die,
Right.
and you're
Yeah.
gonna be in pain. And I'm gonna be in pain. And likely we are in pain. Likely beloveds around us are suffering or dying, or it's um and that's part of our lives. That's just part of our lives. Loss
Hmm.
is part of our lives. Physical
Yeah.
pain is part of our lives for now,
Yeah. Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera. And that, to me, that's like sort of, and that does not, you know, that does not at all diminish and frankly, it makes it, to me, real, the blessings, the
Mm,
gratitude, you know.
mm.
Um, it's not like, yeah.
What do you mean? Okay, so there's a couple of things here. What do you mean by real?
Real.
Well, you said it makes it real. What does that mean real? Like you can sense it physically, feel it in your body, like as opposed to it's just this abstract idea, like gratitude. You're saying that, this practice of gratitude for all things,
Yeah.
whether the feel good ones or the sorrows, um, makes it real. So what do you mean by real?
So I think I'm talking about um a like, I don't want to, because I do in my head, I have a little bit of a kind of, it is not this, it is not this, it is not this, but I don't want to do that. I actually want to say what it is.
Mm,
Um, when I say real, um, it might be that when I say real, I might mean that it's not disconnected from sorrow,
mm.
and that it's not or that it's not disconnected from the fact of our, um, I don't know, our impending deaths, depending on how you relate to that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
say sorrow, say
Yeah.
sorrow. Um, like a kind of pursuit of quote unquote happiness, or a pursuit of things to be grateful for,
Yeah. Yeah.
is a way of, I think, is a way toward sort of, is a way. I mean, it's just like, it's just immature,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it's
Yeah. Yeah.
immature. Um,
Well,
and
it's surface level,
it's
I
surface,
think.
yeah.
Um,
And when
it's
I say immature, I mean like I'm all for immaturity. I'm all, but I mean,
I will attest to that, people.
I'm talking about like spiritual, like,
Yeah.
soulfully
It's
immature.
well, or spiritual performativity,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Where it's like, and I'm glad you brought this up because there's this thing, right, in I don't know, new age circles and spiritual circles, whatever communities, where it's like if we check off all the boxes,
mhm,
then we can be spiritually enlightened, we can evolve or whatever. So one of those things is let's make a list of gratitudes every day. What can I be grateful for? So let me go through it. Okay. I'm grateful that, and it's like I got a car or whatever. And not to diminish the the blessings of something like having a car, but to notice that the things that most people are grateful for are the positives, are the things that are the obvious blessings. And no one's going around saying, thank you for my cancer. No one's saying that. So I think it's important what you're trying to highlight here is this invitation to look a little deeper at what does it mean to experience gratitude.
Yeah, because yeah, that's it. It's like there's a kind of acquisitiveness in the one. And then there's another kind of I think practice of gratitude or something that is just it's about what is,
Right.
you know, just
Right.
what is, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh it's not it's this is what is. And
Yeah.
um
And that's it. And that's it, my friends. That's what you have to do. No, not have to. I don't want to prescribe things.
well, I
But
mean, like
it,
in terms of like a regular, it's not that to me, that's not like hard to like tap into to be like, all right, well, I'm gonna try to do that one today. You
yeah.
know, like
Yeah.
when whatever it is, like I guess I'm not gonna get there on time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it.
You know,
That's a
in the
good
most
one.
basic, like simple
Yeah.
little,
Yeah.
depending on where you're going, you know, if someone's
Guess
in a,
I'm going to miss my flight.
yeah, I'm gonna miss my flight. Someone's in the hospital dying, you
Yeah.
know, like
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
might, oh, you might miss the chance to say goodbye, you know.
Yeah. Well, I'm talking about a flight and you're talking about someone dying. Thanks.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. You know, that's what
I
I'm
know.
talking
I know.
about.
I
You
know.
know,
I know. I know.
when I'm in traffic and I'm like, you know,
Yeah. It's accepting what it
when
is.
I'm feeling very patient, I'm
Mm.
sometimes like, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not going to the hospital right now. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm just I'm just going to get a coffee.
Yeah.
Coffee's gonna be there. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. And it just all boils down to that. It's about being present in the moment and acknowledging that presence and that beingness, um and being grateful for that,
Yeah.
whatever it is that's happening, um which is really interesting because I don't think I told you this, but my mom got sick um around Thanksgiving with COVID,
Mm,
and it was, it wasn't good.
mm,
She was put on a ventilator. She actually just got off the ventilator, which was very exciting. Maybe last week, like 5 days ago.
wow.
Yeah, so she'd been on the ventilator for about almost 8 weeks,
Mm,
and it was interesting for me to observe how I was responding to that, because most folks would be like freaking out, getting upset. Oh my God, is this it? Is this the end? There were a few moments where we thought maybe this is it. Maybe this is her time to go.
right.
And I was very, I was observing myself. I was like witness to myself. So there was like two me's happening. Um, and I was able to observe myself and my responses and noticing that I wasn't losing my shit.
Mhm,
I was very, like you were saying just now, like, this is how it is. This is what it is. If it's her time to go, it's her time to go. I'm at peace with that. And I was very grounded and centered. And I was like, wow, I
mm,
think I've outgrown the spiritual immaturity.
mm, mhm,
So it was a really, for me, a great, uh no, I don't want to say test, but more like a revelation of how much I've grown personally in that respect.
mm,
And the ego part of me was like, what's wrong with you? Like, shouldn't you
mm,
be crying or stressed out or upset or like in fear? Or, like, what's going on with you? I was like, I'm good. This is how it is, and
mm.
can't do anything about it.
Right, right, right.
So I'm just gonna observe it and notice it and, you know, be
Yeah,
with it.
yeah, yeah. I'm glad she's off the ventilator.
Yeah, yeah, she's on the mend, which we're all grateful for, talking about gratitude.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So yeah, so I love talking to you about this because I feel like we can really dive into these kinds of conversations in ways that make sense to well, let's just say the layman, the regular folks who are just starting on this kind of understanding. So that said, how did you, I don't know if it's going to be a short answer, but how did you come to this place of understanding in terms of, whether it's the spiritual context, the larger scope of the collective, all that oneness that we're talking about? How did you get to this point? Like, from when we first met back in college up until this point? You don't have to give the play by play, but
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I can say like like a very incomplete thing. I feel like kind of, I'm a little bit, I'm writing about this now, but following college, or toward the end of college, I sort of had a kind of a crisis, like some kind of crack up, I'll call it. And that went on for a long time. And I sort of, very short version is that I had a friend um, recommend that I read Pema Chodron's work, and I think it was that light blue book.
The Wisdom of No Escape.
Yeah, I think it was that one.
Oh, one of my favorites.
Yeah, yeah. And oh my God.
Oof.
There are all these moments in my life where I sort of feel like, Nora kind of saved my life a little bit by giving me and so that was a little crack, like a little beginning of
your journey.
Yeah, or of even like thinking of like in a way that I would I mean, it's all part of the thing to me, but like that's that's a kind of
that was the start.
That was a certain start, and it's a start that's happening, it's continuing. It's like, I feel like it's very much a start, and it's a start that has all kinds of modes of, self-inquiry and I'm trying to think of a word of the diminishment of the self. Diminishment of the self-inquiry.
I'm like, there you go. You got it.
Yeah. But I after my dad died, I was a fucking mess in various ways. And I remember seeing you and Pat actually at a bookstore down there on Route 1. I can't remember if it was like Metuchen or a little, maybe around there. But while he was dying, but after he was dying, I had all kinds of like just profound sorrow, but also had no capacity at all to sort of articulate or to be with my sorrow. It was just like it was not yet in my skill set,
yeah.
And so I was going fucking crazy in certain ways. And so again, I went, to Thomas Jefferson Hospital and took a meditation class, or they had it, what they called it, I forget what they called it, but and then took another one, and I'm in therapy and couples therapy and all the things. Trying to figure something out, So, it starts like that, but even like, in my teaching, in my writing and all this stuff, like my writing part of why I'm so interested and I think committed, it's so fun to me is actually like, and not just happy fun, but like interesting to me, writing is because part of it is like this inquiry. And an inquiry in which what I thought I knew, man, you didn't know, nope.
You don't know nothing.
And like I thought I was so clear on a thing, or I thought I knew my motivations. I thought I knew and it's like, and so like to talk about teaching, we both teach poetry, etc. And I hate workshops. I hate poetry workshops. I hate the idea of the workshop. And I've been thinking about why I hate it. And I don't do it anymore. I won't do it. And partly because I realized that the mode of the workshop, and it can be all kinds of, it can be a loving mode but I think it mostly isn't. I think it's a constricting mode, and the mode is to fix.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized, oh, my interest in poetry and people, you know, I don't always act like this, but it's my interest to be interested in it, is unfixing.
Mm,
I don't want to fix any fucking thing. I
mm.
want to fix it, you know. And with a poem, I don't want to, you know, like if you were to ask me, hey, can you fix this poem? Help me fix this poem. I could. I could fix it into something that I can recognize as a poem, which then would be like, all right, it's not that interesting. It's just
Right.
like, it's all right, we fixed it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm so interested in unfixing uh, work, but also unfixing oneself, one's identity. You know,
Well, what
one.
do you mean by that? By unfixing?
So you fix a thing by putting in my head, the first image
Yeah.
is you pin it to the wall, and to
Okay.
unfix it, you take the pin out, and then it can kind of be what it
Okay.
maybe what it is. You know, what
Yeah.
it wants
Yeah.
to be.
Yeah.
So like a. Do you want me to talk about it in terms of like a poem or something?
Well, yeah, because I'm in agreement with what you're saying, and the idea of fixing something, right, means that there are these expectations, right? There is these preconceived notions of what makes a poem. We'll just take the poetry workshop as an
Yeah.
example, right? So we want to fix it to fit the mold that somebody else gave us,
Yeah.
right? Which is totally against the essence of writing poetry.
Yeah.
So the unfixing is the thing that I'm trying to wrap my head around. Is it this idea of, let me try to encourage the bud of that poem to open up?
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't feel like unfixing. That feels more like a nurturing. So that's why I'm just asking about
Oh
what you
yeah.
mean by
I
that.
mean, yeah, totally. I mean, I feel like that in terms of a classroom, yeah, like letting the bud of the poem open up is the thing. But also like what I'm interested in a classroom, I realize I'm interested in, as I'm interested in other spaces, is what if we are in a community together and the community is not to reify what we think a poem is or what we think the good is or good
Right.
is, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But actually we want to do is unfix those things and the unfixing itself might actually allow us to figure out what we think the beautiful is.
Hmm.
Not with a, well, I know the beautiful, well, it's easiest. The beautiful is, I don't know.
The thing that it is.
The thing that it is, yeah, like the, because often we think we know, we know what the, it's just like we know what the beautiful is, and I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna make the beautiful because I know what it is, or you know what it is, and you'll tell me how to make the thing that's the beautiful. Because, and I'm just gonna agree to that, and it's fine. Like I understand, like it's fine, and it's and you all these traditions and stuff is fine too. Like like I think it's nice to learn like how to write the sonnet. I think that's good. I
Right.
think it's cool.
Right.
But more what I'm not, so this is actually an entirely different thing. More the thing is like how how do we how do we even engage the process of making in ways that really destabilize our capacity, or our capacity really, no, really really destabilize what master we thought we had, what mastery we thought.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So
That,
yeah, yeah, go
yeah.
ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say that's different for me than unfixing, because as you were talking, I was like, to to fix something implies that something's already broken, right? To unfix something, I don't know if I can understand the opposite, like, of fixing, right? Because the thing's already broken. So what you're saying here shifts a little bit to
Hmm.
this idea of what? I just
Well,
lost my train of thought. Like,
you're right. So I'm using two things. I'm kind of like slippery with the
yeah,
word.
yeah, yeah.
So
I'm
to fix
following.
the thing, yeah, to fix a thing implies that it's broken.
Yeah.
So bring your poem into class, and it's going to be a little bit broken, and we'll fix it. We'll put it together, and then you'll have a poem. Okay. So, but to unfix it implies, I'm glad that you brought this up because it helps me to sort of articulate my idea, the idea. to unfix it implies breaking it. But that's, so I'm slipping it over and saying that the fixing itself, like the fixing the broken thing, is a kind of equivalent to pinning it to the wall, because pinning it in a case, because we know how a poem operates if we're able to do that.
Right.
The unfixing is not a breaking, but the unfixing is just taking out what we think a poem is.
Mm.
It's taking, we don't know, I don't know what a poem is, you know?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know. I know what poems used to be, but I
Yeah.
don't know what a poem is. I know what Ross Gay used to be,
Yeah.
but I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know what this thing is. That's it. You know. So
Yeah. I
and
get.
it's so
Yeah.
fun to get older, and to be like, yeah, I've told this story so much, and you know what? This might not have actually fucking happened. This might not have happened.
Yeah.
Or like, you know, like, yeah, and it's so good to have a brother who is like close to me in age, and like we were tight, we were around each other a lot, and to be like, just to text him and to be like, yo, what did we make when we were working at Burger King? You know, and just to be like, all right, okay, that one's right. And then to be like, did Dad get fired that time from that job? I don't think he got fired. I think he quit from that one.
Mm.
Like, just in terms of like filling out, again, our memories.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's like, you know, I'm at this happy stage in my life where to some extent I am like, what was going on? Like, what was I doing? What happened? Or, you know?
Yeah. 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 You
But
know, it's
also
so interesting, but it's because you're here, right? And then looking back, then I don't know if this is the case for you, but then I thought I knew everything, right? And I think that's sort of symptomatic of people in their early life, early adulthood.
Yeah.
You think you know everything, but then you learn as you get older that we really don't know anything. And so what I'm hearing from you is that the unfixing is more of an uncovering of what it is that we don't know.
Yeah, and maybe an uncovering of the unknowing itself as like as a not only reasonable, but like nice. Nice is the wrong word because it doesn't always feel nice, but like
Right.
maybe good is the word, you know.
Yeah.
Like unknowing is good. In terms of just like, you know, talking back about poetry, it's like, it's for sure good for poetry, you
Oh
know,
yeah.
to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know, like to be able to sort of reside with the mystery, I think that's like that's an old wisdom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not, but man,
As he's stroking his chin. No, just
yeah. But that's not something that, like, you know, school doesn't teach you that.
Oh yeah, no.
School
No.
doesn't teach you that.
No.
Um, School teaches you how to be right, how to be a little productive little member of society. That's what school teaches you,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. And
Yeah.
productive member of society is a fixing,
Yeah.
and all of the
It
things are
is.
fixed in there, you know.
Yeah.
And as opposed to being like, well, what? I don't know, just like,
Right.
I don't know, you know, like school. How
I don't
about
know.
follow your joy school, or like, or
Right.
find joy.
Right. Or like learn how to just live your life
Yeah,
as you're
yeah,
guided to live it, you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
Um, yeah, it's so funny because you said I don't old Ross knew what a poem was, but you don't know what a poem is now.
Mhm.
Can you elaborate on that? Because I'm feeling very much in that space as well. So I'm
Mhm.
just curious about how you're in that space of I don't know what a poem is.
You know, I'm just like, you know, we went to the same graduate program. Like I mean, we're the same age. We kind of like, I think um, got the same education, you know, um,
The same indoctrination.
the same indoctrination, you know, and though I am thinking right now of a teacher we have in common, Lee Upton, who
Mhm.
was more of a like, just do it, you know, like
Yeah.
just make a
Yeah.
thing, find it,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and it's amazing to me, like that. It's a beautiful mode of teaching that I try to emulate, you know.
Mm.
But it's also something that it's only recently occurring to me that um, that Lee had that capacity to be like, come on, just find stuff. Just find stuff. I don't think it was really her inclination, unless you ask specifically for like a fixing, you know.
Right.
I think her inclination was like, oh, let's find it. Let's see.
Yeah. Yeah.
Keep going, like a kind of, come on, let's do that. But so yes, so that way of being with a poem, etc., etc., is fucking horrible. Is, this and when I was writing about it, I was like, there's two ways that a good workshop for people who aren't like writer people listening. A workshop is like the standard mode of, you've probably talked about this. Have you talked about this?
Not really, but I mean, it's just, a standard mode of offering quote unquote feedback.
Yeah. So it's a classroom mode, a teaching mode, and people bring in their stuff, a poem, as we've already said. And to me, it's like there's two ways in that mode where a class goes well, where you've had a good class, not the teacher, the student. One, people liked your poem, and two, they know how to fix it, or two, they know how to fix it.
Right. Right.
Otherwise, if the mode itself, the form itself does not allow for the class as a whole to be like, I don't know what the fuck. That's a failure. It's a failure all around in that genre of class. There's another genre of gathering that's like, I don't know, where it's just like, whoa, all right.
Cool. I don't either.
Yeah. Okay, cool. But so that, and so over years and years and years, I got good at that. I could like, and every once in a while, like I'd have a student who now I'm like, damn, that was an interesting writer, whose work I could not quite engage because I didn't know how to fix their work. And that's a mode of being, like, I don't know how to engage someone that I don't know how to fix.
Well, you don't want to fix them, right?
I don't want to fix them, but I also, I bet it's a good thing to know. It's a good thing to know if I do wanna,
Yeah.
It's a good thing to know if I do wanna,
Right.
I don't wanna.
Right.
But anyway, so
Ross has spoken, the most articulate poet on the planet.
I don't wanna. But at some point, I don't know, all kinds of influences, of course, all kinds of influences made me just be like, and one of the influences being my body, my actual body, and being like, I always feel physically bad in these classes. Like I always feel guilty. I feel like I haven't done enough, or I feel like I've done too much, or I feel like I'm wasting their time, or I feel like I'm spending too much time, or it's just like, it's never. And I kind of feel the same way. Like the only way that I could succeed is to like fix.
Yeah. Well, because the idea of success has been imposed on you, right? As far as like what it looks like.
You're the arbiter. You're the arbiter of the good, which is no place to be, man. That's no place to be. And so anyway, at some point I just was, I mean, it's like 4 years ago, I was just like, with my classes, I had this class and I was like, I tried to kind of do something a little different, and then it just didn't quite work. And I had this brilliant, loving student be like, why did you stop doing what you were doing? And I was like, because I was doing something weird. I was trying to do something weird. I was trying to unfix something. And this student, and I was like, they don't want to do this, all the things. Like, I was like, because I didn't want to be wrong. I didn't, and this student freed me because she was like, why? Well, just like an adult, like grown, like, what was going on? Like, why did you just stop? And I was like, I don't know. I felt like you guys didn't like it.
That's a good reason.
I know. And meanwhile, this is like, I have tenure. Like I'm not like in danger of like, I could just be like, come on, man, like this semester we're drawing dandelions. That's what we're doing,
Right.
Which I think would not be a bad thing to do. Like,
no, that'd be fun.
Be good. Learn how to write a better poem. We get better. We get better. We get closer.
Yeah. See, and that's interesting. The sort of automatic language we turn to, right?
I know it.
because it's been so driven into us.
It's so driven.
Like,
Yeah.
what is a good poem? What's
Yeah.
not a good poem? What's successful? What's not?
Yeah.
For me, it's like, and even this is sort of problematic, but what I ask my students is like, does it feel clear in terms of your emotional engagement with the poem?
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know, which again is not accurate, because emotional engagement with a poem can be muddy. It can be
Yeah.
vague. It could be like, I don't know what's going on, you
Yeah.
know?
Yep. Yep. It's
Language is a tricky thing, man.
it's tricky. Yeah, communicating is tricky. And knowing that sort of like the poem is a kind of interface between this interior thing and an exterior thing or something. It's a good moment to bring in Jean Valentine, you know,
Mm,
who died on I think December 29th, so a month
mhm.
and a half ago or something.
Yeah.
Was just such an amazing amazing person and writer and spirit. Oh my God. And so again, I want to say another influence, who it hasn't occurred to me. It occurs to me that she's an influence in a lot of ways, but one of the ways is sort of notion of an unfixing.
Mm,
Uh, I hadn't quite articulated as coming in part from her. Um, it's part from Jean Valentine, who like her poems are mysterious and they're not like fixable things, and I know, like we're friends and we have friends in common, and I know that she was in like writing groups and stuff.
mm.
She had like a little crew of folks who they did poems together, and I always think, wow, how does someone, because she has a kind of poems that are like you kind of just be with them. That's my experience.
Yeah.
You be with
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. Yeah.
um they're on their terms. They're
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
you can't really fix a Gene Valentine.
No. And you really can't articulate, at least my experience has been, you can't really articulate what it is that you're feeling when you're reading the poems. You're just there experiencing it.
You're just there with it. Yeah, yeah. And it's kind of like a light in your
Yeah.
body. It's just like I'm
Yeah.
gonna put this light in my body.
Yeah.
But anyway,
So you're trying to imagine what her writing group is like?
yeah, I was like, oh, I wonder, like, because like I now feel like I could kind of be with. There would be a time where in fact, there was a time where I couldn't quite get with her poems. I couldn't. I was
Mm.
just, and it was a time when I think I was just less, um, well,
Open,
was that?
open, less open.
I was definitely less open. Yeah, I was definitely less open. But I also was less, I think, um, well, I'll just put it like this. I feel like one of the things that Jean Valentine's poems do for me, that the older I get, the more I'm not just grateful for, but also like really interested in, is that
Mm.
they hold mysteries. They hold the
Mm.
mysteries,
Yeah.
and they're not like, um, they're just a different thing. They're just a different thing than you know um, than certain things. And I feel like that kind of, and she also, as I understand it from the conversations I've had with her and the time I spent with her, she also had a relationship to poems. There was a mysterious relationship, as far as I
Mm.
understand it, and that it was such a beautiful thing to be in her presence and to have conversations where I think she said, I can't remember exactly how she put it, but there was something along the lines of like, you know, there will be things that show up in the poems, that come through in the poems, and people, because it's what we do, like, we go and we talk to, young writers, or not young writers, and they say, why did you put the something in line 3 and da da da, or this line break here, da 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 da. And part of what the kind of, you know little pretend show is that we always know we always know.
No
And
way.
I know, I
I don't
know,
know anything.
I know, but Gene was the first poet, like sort of major poet who I heard. Gerald Stern was like that too, actually,
Mm.
in a different kind of way.
Hmm.
But Gene was like, I don't know. I don't
Mm.
know why the wolf came in right there.
Mm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
And could inhabit it, and also understood too that like that's not satisfying for people. because people want to know how to make a Jean Valentine poem.
Oh yeah, no, you can't.
You
You
can't.
can't.
You
You
can't.
can't.
She can't. She can't make a Jean Valentine. That's the thing. Like she couldn't make a
Yeah.
Jean Valentine poem. She
Yeah.
could just make the next thing that she was making, you know.
Right. Right.
And I think she probably wasn't interested in making it, which is the thing that I feel like is that's so interesting. And so back to your question, like about not quite knowing how a poem works, or how to make a poem, or even I just find that profoundly interesting to be going into, if you're working on a poem or a piece or a dance or a conversation or whatever, hard conversation, hard. um I'm thinking about some couple silly shit we're going through. Hard, but like, you know, but not to impose what you think it should be on the thing, but just to be like, we're just gonna do something, you
Yeah.
know, we're gonna do
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. Yeah. It's called trust,
It's
right?
called
It's
rest. Yeah.
it's trusting, and whatever comes out is the thing that needed to have been created.
And true curiosity, because, you know,
Yeah.
trust and curiosity, there's some kind of interplay between them. Like,
Yeah.
you know, a workshop is a profoundly uncurious place,
Oh my God. Yeah.
you know.
It kills
And
it.
yeah, yeah. And I remember the first time I was in a workshop, this was Gerald's turn, and Jerry said something like to someone about their poem, because their poem was difficult, you know, not difficult like it was like emotionally
Mm.
hurt. It was a hurting poem. And Jerry asked if the person was all right
Mm.
in class, which in my experience was not something he did, because
Yeah.
speak
Yeah.
there, and God forbid you
The poet
transgress.
are the same,
Yeah,
right?
but
No.
God forbid you
Oh no.
And it was this crack, this moment that I thought was so
Mm.
powerful. But it was like his sort of very basic animal curiosity got the better of him, you know, and so he made a little crack for all of us to be a little bit better also. And I don't mean better, I mean
I
closer.
know what you mean.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. But it also sounds like he was being a human,
that's
you know,
he was being a better animal. Yeah,
and saying, hey, I see you
yeah,
writing this thing that's super vulnerable and difficult, and I want to extend some compassion and check in with you,
yeah.
which I think is lost in the whole workshop model. But, you know, we're not here to break that down.
Right. But we are
Yeah.
talking
Yeah.
about unfixing, and that was a
Yes.
little moment of unfixing. Actually,
Yeah. Yeah.
it was a
That's,
healing moment of unfixing.
yeah. And see, and now Jerry's coming into your mind, into
Oh,
your being, into the
exactly.
conversations you have with your students and whoever.
Totally.
It's all tied together.
Yeah.
There's no
Yeah.
escaping it. And you can choose how you want to see that.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
see that as a good,
Yeah.
quote unquote, or as a bad, you know, it's like we're all in charge of our ways of responding to things.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I just respond in, depending on what it is, I try to be neutral. Be like, oh, that's interesting, you
Mhm.
know, and I'll go be curious about it and dig in however I need to dig in.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot. So when you write poems, because I've been thinking, so I was thinking about what you said about, you know, I don't know how to write poems, whatever. If someone were to look at the catalog of unabashed gratitude,
Mhm.
right, the long poem at the end of that, it's what do they call it, the titular poem?
Oh, yeah. 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 The titular poem. Right.
You know, someone will read that, and I'm sure you've gotten this, where they're like, that's not a poem. He's just rambling. He's
Mhm.
just talking, and then he's breaking the fourth wall, talking to the reader. Like, he's breaking all the rules. Like, that's not a poem just because you break it up into lines. Like, that could just be like a big block of text and just rambling. Like, what makes it a poem? You know, so I think I'm just bringing that up because,
What I think.
yeah, go ahead.
I'm
I
like,
think.
yeah, God, why is that a poem?
Well,
Why do you say it like that?
yeah.
What am I trying to pretend?
You're like, oh wow, they published that too. I got one good over on them.
Yeah, yeah. Good for you.
um no, but it just brings us to the question of like these preconceived ideas, these expectations of what a poem is, right? And so I, I have, I teach undergrad, so they're always curious about like, give me the rules, give me the magic formula of what makes a poem. And
Yeah,
then I bring this poem in and they're like, wait a minute,
yeah,
you know?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so I forgot where I was going with this. But it was more about the idea of not knowing how to write a poem.
Yeah, and I think probably like it's also totally reasonable to be like, well, you learn how not to write a poem by knowing how to write a poem, knowing what a poem is, what they say a poem is, what we've said a poem is, something like that, you know.
Yeah.
And I think so. I think it's. I mean, that makes sense to me. You know, like that among the things that we do is like even when you're talking about that poem, like that poem is engaged with a lot of ideas about poems, you know. So even like when it talks to the reader, not only is it like referencing um other poets who do that, you know, and I think very clearly like I learned that many places, but from this writer named Ira Sadoff, who in this beautiful poem, I think it's a poem called Grazing, he has this moment in there where he says something, I forget what he says, and then he says, I'm trying to make us closer. He's
Mm,
talking, and I'm trying to bring you closer. And
mm,
because right above he had done something that was a little, maybe a little bit sentimental or something, a little bit emotional, like a
mm.
change in register. And he says, I'm trying to bring you closer. He breaks the fourth wall. I think, you know, like anyway, I learned these things from poems.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm sort of like bringing, you know, all my bags into the poem and then trying to be like, and from that trying to fiddle around with the form or unfix the form, um or something, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, and I when I think of that poem, I mean, I understand that like kids would be like, damn, like, why is this but I also feel like
I
that's
can write that.
yeah. I also feel like that poem's pretty poemy, you know. And I think of like other work that really challenges, you know, if someone were to um do a you know, do a unicycle race, and be like, that's my poem. I'd be like, oh, okay, they're really unfixing the form. They're
Yeah.
really testing the form here, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, etc.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so funny because I just now the thought in my head popped in was like, you're really generous. Not in relationship to what you just said about the unicycle, but I'm thinking in the context of like undergraduates who don't who are only learning about poetry, only starting to learn. So then they have this argument of, well, if anything could be a poem, I'm just going to write a sentence and break it up into short lines.
Yeah,
There's my poem.
yeah.
And so then I have to, not have to, but I generally have the conversation of, but what's your intention?
Hmm.
You know, what's your intention? Because if you're intending to say, I'm going to make a poem by breaking up a sentence into short lines, you already said that it's a sentence.
Yeah.
So there's your intention. So it's not a poem. But they're like, what?
Wait, if they said it's a poem, then is it a poem? I mean,
Well,
if you think of like Marcel Duchamp, like, is it like the urinal? It's like, I don't know, it's art.
I don't know. I mean, part of me, and this is sort of like the woo side of me,
Yeah,
is all about intention,
yeah,
right? So if a student comes to me and says, I'm going to take the sentence, the what is it? The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. That's a sentence we all use to remember how to type, to learn how to type, right?
yeah,
Get our fingers in place and stuff. So I'm going to take that sentence, I'm going to break it into lines to make it look like a poem, like make it really skinny. Maybe I'll break it every 2 lines or whatever. Um, if they just say that and that's their intention, knowing that they're taking a sentence and it stops there, then for me, that's not a poem. But if they have a deeper intention of really engaging with that language to create something that becomes a poem, then okay.
mhm.
So for me, it's about intention.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
It can look the same. Like
Yeah.
I got student A who does the same thing as student B, but student B is like, oh my God, poetry is my life. Let me like shape this thing. energetically, because I'm all woo-woo, energetically, I can feel that from the poem versus the student who was lazy and just chopped it up.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So I don't know. But anyway.
Yeah. I mean, if I was in that classroom, if I was with a student who did that, I would just, I mean, I would be like, well, yeah, I do that sometimes too. And I would be curious. I'd be like, well, that's one of the ways that you learn how a line works, actually.
Yeah.
That's like a very basic way that you learn how a line works, you know?
Totally. Totally. Yeah. But see, what you did was you turned it away from poem to here's a learning opportunity. Here's a tool that you can use.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wow. Anyway, we could talk forever. And I'm sure that you have other things to attend to, like spiritual immaturity, maybe. No, I'm just kidding.
Definitely that.
So to close the episode, do you have a poem that you want to share with the listeners?
I do. And let me just, I often garble I mix up the title, which is not written on this version.
Oh, okay. I was like, are you going to read your whole long book length poem?
Oh, no. This is my poem. Yep.
That was amazing, by the way.
Thank you. It's called To the Young Who Want to Die, and it's by Gwendolyn Brooks, who is another, like, profound teacher and anyway, I'll just say that. Gwendolyn Brooks, To the Young Who Want to Die. Sit down, inhale, exhale. The gun will wait. The lake will wait. The tall gall and the small seductive vial will wait. We'll wait. We'll wait a week. We'll wait through April. You do not have to die this certain day. Death will abide. Will paper your postponement. I assure you, death will wait. Death has a lot of time. Death can attend to you tomorrow or next week. Death is just down the street. His most obliging neighbor can meet you at any moment. You need not die today. Stay here through pout or pain or peskiness. Stay here. See what the news is going to be tomorrow. Graves grow no green that you can use. Remember, green is your color. You are spring.
I love that. Oh,
Yep.
So good.
Yep.
Talk about being like a call to being present, to being here in the moment.
Yeah.
Oh, so beautiful. Oh, Ross, thank you so much for this conversation. I feel like there should be a part 2, but I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. If you want.
But thank you. And so my friends, my listeners, thank you so much for joining us for our latest episode with Ross Gay. As always, we'll close the episode. The divine light in me bows to the divine light in you. Namaste. Until next time. Bye.